Hi, Rabbi. Hope things are going well with you. I had an interesting question come up in light of some of the response to our previous video uh, that suggests that if we are anti-Israel, we are anti-Semitic. Now, I myself do political cartoons about the United States and some of its policies and practices, including the current administration. I have even in my day been known to draw anti-Obama cartoons because when I see something that I disagree with and think is wrong, I try to bring attention to it. That doesn't make me feel like I'm anti-United
Right.
States. I think I'm in fact verifying my loyalty to the country by pointing out its flaws. And President Obama at one point pointed out, if you're not being critical and calling out your country when you think they're doing something wrong, you are in fact being anti-American because we need to point out when we think a country we support is doing something wrong. So I think you had a suggestion about this perspective about Israel.
Exactly. You're spot on. And the Anti-Defamation League, Natan Sharansky, and others have been looking at the question, anti-Semitism, is that anti-Zionism? Is anti-Zionism anti-Semitism? And they came up with three questions to analyze the statement or the person. And I would like to introduce those three questions. I've boiled them down without going into all the research or the nuances. But I just want it to be clear, I didn't invent these. I'm just using them and presenting them because it's a much better litmus test than Israel right or wrong. And if you're against Israel, then you're against Judaism or Jews, and that's just ridiculous because it just isn't true. So let me get to the first question. Is the criticism aimed at the Israeli government's actions, or is it aimed at the Jewish people generally? Now, fine, as you just said, criticize the government. But to criticize Jews as a group, now you've become anti Semitic.
Saying something that the current Israeli government is doing is inappropriate, is not being anti-Semitic, in your opinion. And in general, I would say you're right about that because there are many prominent figures, Jewish figures. Mandy Patinkin comes to mind, who is vehemently against the practices of the Israeli government right now, and in particular in the way it's treating the Gaza situation. And I can't think of anybody who's less anti-Semitic than Mandy Patinkin.
I don't hear people going around accusing all Russians of what's going on in the Ukraine. People always go after the government of Russia. What isn't that what we're talking about here, Joe?
I have friends who are Russians, and I know that many of them disagree with the current government's policies in the Ukraine and the war in Ukraine. I When I criticize Russia and Putin for what he is doing in the Ukraine, I am not criticizing my friends who are cartoonists in Moscow and in other parts of the Soviet Union. In fact, I'm doing a much more casual approach to criticism than they are because they are in Moscow and they are criticizing the government. I'm not sure I would be brave enough to do that if I were there.
So then that gives us the first question you have to ask of the speaker or think about. Is the person speaking talking about government actions, or are they blaming all of us Jews as a group? And that is our first. Okay. Second question, double standard. Would you use the same language for any other country doing the same thing? Or does the outrage only show up when it's the one Jewish country in the known universe? So people attacking the governments in Africa? Are people attacking Iran's government? Are people attacking Putin? Or are they singling out? And that if they're singling out a Jewish state, then that's anti-Semitism, a double standard. But if they're attacking all of them in their repertoire and on their government, then they're not anti-Semitic. They're just attacking governments. What are your thoughts, Joe?
I'm a big proponent of Native American rights. You can't really say that when Native Americans criticize the policies of our current government or any government or some of the practices that have happened to them over the last 250 years that they are anti-American. Native Americans were the first Americans. So they're just defending a perspective of their citizenry, their country, against the administration in their country. That's not the same as saying that all citizens of the United States are bad, just that we have to consider their rights as part of our participation in the country.
Okay, let's move on to my third and final question. Is the person criticizing how the government is acting, or are they denying the Jewish people the right to have a country? Are they saying Palestine next to Israel, or are they saying Palestine instead of Israel? And as soon as we start hearing instead of, they're attacking the country, that's anti Semitic. That's not anti Zionist, Joe.
And I think this is a point that people keep forgetting. And to his defense, I think this is the point that President Netanyahu is trying to make. I just think he's going about it in the worst possible way. That he is not at war with the Palestinian people, he is at war with Hamas and all the countries that support Hamas. But I don't think that he's doing it in a way that is anything except exactly what Hamas wanted him to do.
So there you have my three questions and my new litmus test for you watching and listening, because real anti Semitism does look different. Real anti Semitism is blaming random Jews for the Israeli government's choices, claiming American Jews are secretly loyal to Israel, more so than their own country. And finally, being everyone's entitled to a homeland except the Jews. You can have a Palestinian homeland. You can have one for this group, that group. But I'm focusing in on Israel. That's the real litmus test to tell us that person is anti Semite, or is that person just critical of the Israeli government?
And in the end, doesn't this just go back to what the founders intended about the separation of church and state? That you can't justify any action based solely on the precept that God intended for us to win and them to lose.
Absolutely. And this is what we want our viewers and listeners to walk away with. Take the three questions as the litmus test. Point them at yourself, point them at anyone. Be objective and make that distinction that I just outlined. Are we blaming the government, or are we blaming Jewish people? Are we, do we claim that Jews aren't entitled to a homeland and everybody else is? And do we use the same criteria everywhere? Do it. Do the litmus test. Do it on me. Find out, anti-Semite or anti-Zionist.